Today, we're going to talk about interview coaching, and in particular, we're going to talk about some of the, I don't want to call them nastiest interview questions because they're not really, but they're easy to mess up. And let's get right into what today's all about. There are questions that come at you in the interview, and they're around, problem solving or challenges, disagreements, how you influence people, how you serve people, how you lead people, and what you're passionate about. And I think these are some of the most critical job interview questions to get right. I'm not saying your interview hinges on these. I think you probably could lose your interview on these questions. I think your interview hinges on a few other areas, a few other types of questions. And I'm going to talk up front for a couple minutes about those. But what I want to do today is I want to give you an absolute, total, bulletproof formula for you to be able to answer these half a dozen questions or any like this. And it won't matter who you are or where you are in your career. All of you, whether you're the 22-year-old emerging professional or somebody who's nearing retirement, can use this exact formula with the exact details that I'm going to give you today to absolutely smash these. Cool? Who's stoked? Give me a hey in the chat if you're here with me live. If you're watching on the recording, give me a hey in the comments. Okay, before I get into that, let's go back to Dear Coach Andy's Anatomy of an Interview. I've drawn this picture a few times. If you've never seen it, this is Interview Anatomy 101. This is how most interviews are conducted. Not always, but most, right? You get in there and you introduce yourself. Hey, tell me about yourself. Hey, walk me through your resume. Tell me a little bit about you. Something like that. There's usually the hello. Then there's what I call a power story. We're not going to go into power stories today, but a power story, in simplest terms, is your bread and butter story, something you've done in your work history throughout your career that is virtually an exact match for what they need you to do in the new job. And by you telling it early in the interviewing process and early in an interview and compressing it into as few words as possible, by checking off as many skills as they want to hear you have, is really a great way to get their attention early, show them you are exactly what they need, and you are usually describing a project that you'd run. I have a lot more on this on my channel, and the earlier you get that out, the better you can set up the interview because you're showing them, I have the experience you need, and if I do something like this in your environment, it's going to help transform you forward to help you achieve your goals. I've already helped somebody else overcome very similar problems that you have, and you want to show them how you're going to operate in their environment. But then what usually happens is you have what I call these branch questions that come about. So as you're telling your story about your project or projects or analogous work experience, they might ask you questions like, well, what problems did you encounter along the way? Tell me about, was there anything along the way where you really had to influence somebody or disagreed with somebody or encountered a situation you'd never seen before, a total challenge? And so these are like these little offshoot questions. I call them branches because I like the electrical engineering analogy of power, right? And branches, electrical branches, or if you want tree trunks and branches and leaves off the tree, that's fine too. But you end up spending time with these types of questions that are not typically given to you out of the cold. Now, sometimes you're in behavioral interviewing style of sessions, interviews, and then they very coldly ask you, well, tell me about a problem you overcame. And there's a method to the madness in the way in which you want to do it. But the formula I'm going to give you today is going to cover that as well. And then you usually get to, toward the end, ask some questions. So I want to talk about the stuff in red. I don't know if you could really see that, but that's my red marker that was almost out of ink. But we're going to talk about these branches today, these things that I've highlighted for you and these questions that I want you to be able to answer. And it doesn't matter how you get asked these questions or when you get asked these questions. So if you're telling a story and they interrupt you or intercept you and ask you, hey, I want to dive deeper on that particular step in the process. How did you influence that committee? It could be asked that way. Or they might just say, tell me about a time you had to influence somebody. And the one thing before we get into the tactics that I want you to make sure that you think about is, and maybe take some notes along this session, But I want you to tell stories that are germane to the employer that you're interviewing with. Just because you think it was a cool disagreement and you won the argument or whatever it is, does not necessarily mean that that example is going to help them extrapolate into their environment, how you're going to operate with their types of customers, their types of team members, their types of challenges and problems. So you always want to be careful in your selection of the story you tell. But I want to insulate you from, if you don't have a great story, regardless of when you get asked these questions, I want to give you a formula that any of you can use. You can actually use the words I'm giving you today for all six of these. So let's get rolling. I am totally stoked about this. Okay. All right. First thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about what I want shooting through your head whenever you get a question like this. Now, anybody who's followed me or has hawked my YouTube channel and has discovered my CAR technique, that's CAAR, which is, it stands for context. And then there's an approach, like your outline of the story you're gonna tell. Then some of the specific acts that you did with each step in your outline, and then the result. But you're also gonna preview the result in the context. Anyway, I'm not gonna go too into detail, but the reason I want to mention that is, for those of you that are very familiar with that technique, you notice that I always like you to talk in lists. It's easier for the person who's receiving the information to follow. You've given them a map. If you give them and you say 5 steps, they know there's 5 steps. If you say I'm in the first step, they know where you are. You say I'm in the second step, they know where you are. And it's easier for them to pay attention. It's easier for them to follow your story. And that's really important when you're interviewing. So the first thing I want you to do whenever you get asked any of those 6 questions or anything like it, I want you to think about these 2 things I'm going to tell you. A 1, a 2, a 3. Anytime you get asked any of these questions or any questions like it, I do not want you to start by telling them a story. I want you to tell them your philosophy or your approach or your outline or your steps. And I don't just want you to state them. I want you to walk them through it using questions, not activities. All right, this is really important. So whenever you're asked a question, the first thing that I want to come out of your mouth are numbers. The second thing I want coming out of your mouth are questions. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean, and I'm going to give you the exact numbers and the exact questions here in a second. Okay, so that's the first thing I want you to do. Second thing is, let's just take an example. Let's take problems first. Okay, we'll go in order of the card. When you're asked about how you overcame a problem, how you troubleshoot problems, how you overcame a challenge, or any question like that, before you give them the scenario and you say, I encountered this problem and it was blah, 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 you can say that right away. But the next thing I want you to say is, and I handle that like I handle any problems. I lead like I lead any teams. I serve like I serve any customer. Whatever it is, I want you to use the any part. And then what I want you to do is I want you to list off your formula for solving a problem. I'm going to give you the formula right now. So if you're asked about a problem, you say, well, I had this problem and I solved it the same way I approach any problem. And the reason you want to give them this up front is because this part of the answer is what will win the actual question. It's what's going to win the interview, because it doesn't matter what problem you solved. They're hiring you for your system. They're hiring you for your mindset, your methodology, and the way in which you approach anything. Who's tracking? Do you see what I mean here? If you dive right into a scenario that they don't love and you have not literally actually reverse engineered the steps you've taken, they're not going to understand that. They're just trying to follow your story. But the first thing I need you to do in advance of the question is to reverse engineer the steps, but I'm going to give them to you. So you just need to copy the video, basically. So you say, it's like I handle any problem. First thing I do is an assessment to get my arms around what's happening. The second thing I do is I don't try to solve the problem. I want to go backwards and see if we got away from anything that was working. Did we get away from our routines? The third thing I want to do is I want to look at the current situation and I want to know if any variables in the environment have changed since we initially started. The next thing is if it's a new scenario that we've never encountered. Then what I do once I have all that assessment done and I understand what the situation is, I'm looking for a solution that makes the most economical sense in the short term. And then I'm also looking at the long-term impacts that whatever we're going to do is going to have. So I need to consider not just the short term and overcome the problem, but I also need to put a plan or a methodology in place or a system that's going to carry us for the long term. Okay, then what you can do, I've given you the outline. The first A part of my card technique. Then what you can do is you can walk them through your specific problem. So when I did the assessment, and then you give it to them, and then I looked at to see if we got away from anything that worked, and I realized I wasn't meditating every morning, and so my brain was all scattered, or whatever it was. You get what I'm saying, right? So this here is how you would answer. How'd you overcome that problem? Or did you encounter a problem? Or what was the problem? Or how do you overcome challenges? Or tell me about a challenge you overcame. I just gave you the formula, and then you're going to fill in the steps with your story. Cool? That's number one. All right. Second thing, disagreements. Disagreements. Can you tell me about a time you disagreed with somebody? Yes. There was this time my colleague and we had a disagreement about the solution we were going to put in place for the customer. And I handled that like I handle any disagreement at work. Generally, disagreements at work usually focus on a solution the team or we're trying to create. That's what most of the disagreements come about. What are the alternatives? Which one should we choose? What's the best solution? So it's like I handle any disagreement. First thing I do is I listen. Second thing I do is I search to make sure. First thing I do is I listen to make sure that I understand everything. Am I factoring in all the information? The second thing I do is once I get the information from the other person who I'm disagreeing with, I look to see, is there a combination solution based on what she thinks, based on what I think? Is there an even better solution than hers or mine? And then in the event there is, we implement that. Otherwise, if there isn't, that's when I will actually share my viewpoint and my insight and persuade if need be. So we had this solution about how we were going to go, just recap it, echo it, go right into your story, and then walk them through how you listened, how you searched for a combination solution, and what happened. And the winning disagreement story is something where you're disagreeing about a solution that this new employer will likely need, and you came up with a combo solution because what does that say? I'm a great listener. I'm a great troubleshooter, and I'm an even better teammate because I'm looking for the best opportunity, the best goal, the best solution, the best everything. I'm a team first player, company first player, and I will make my case if I need to. Makes sense? Makes sense. So that's the disagreement. Who wouldn't want to hire that person, right? It's like miscongeniality. I would love to work with that person. So that's how I would look at disagreements. And then I separated influence because I think influence could be a disagreement element where you actually have to convince somebody. But I also think that there's a constructive way to actually influence people. So if you get asked the question, tell me about a time where you had to influence somebody or a team or the management team, or you're telling a story and you said, hey, I pitched my overall approach to the board and I needed to make sure that they signed off on it. And if you get a question like, well, how are you able to influence them? You're going to say, number of steps, here we go. So first thing I do whenever I need to discuss anything with anybody is I want to think how they think. Take myself out of me, put myself into them. How is it that they would think? Then I want to know, I literally consciously think about, well, what are their concerns right now? Are they concerned about the profit margin? Are they concerned about the customers? Are they concerned about the employee happiness? Then how will they benefit? So not only how will the company benefit, but how will this particular individual benefit by whatever it is I need to influence them to do? Then what is it that they need to know? Because they need information to be able to draw a great conclusion. And I'm trying to influence them based on my suggestion, recommendation, or whatever that is. And then the fifth thing I do in helping shape the way they interpret and view what I'm trying to explain to them is I always come up with a juxtaposition or a different way of looking at it so that I give them a whole fresh perspective that they might not have thought about. There's your 5 steps. So whenever you're influencing somebody, you can say, so I needed to influence this team like I would influence virtually anybody I had a discussion with. There's generally 5 steps I take, right? Think how they think. What are their concerns? How are they going to benefit company and them individually, right? What do they need to know? And then I share the juxtaposition. Who's following so far? Do you see how all of these basically have a similar structure? You always want to get in place what your methodology is, because now, no matter what the example is, and I think you can see that now that I've walked through 3 of these, no matter what your example is, they're still going to love it because they like your approach. Cool? All right, I got to take a swing of this Peak Nandaka. All right, here we go. How do you serve? Okay, this could be anybody. Serve customers, serve teammates, serve internal customers, serve your board. Makes no difference. All right, you get the idea. We're running, right? Let's go right into it. Okay, so there's, I don't know, I think there's 5 or 6 of my total here. 6 steps for serving. So anytime I'm in service mode, which is usually 100% of the time, there's 6 steps I basically consciously go through. First thing is I want to have an empathetic mind. So I take a breather for a second. I want to make sure I think like they think. Anybody who calls the customer service line is not happy something's broken, right? Well, I'm in the middle of my day. I want to make sure I get out of my head and get into their head. Next thing is I want to know what is it that they need or want. But the next thing is I want to fix that as fast as possible. That's first order of business, but that wouldn't be good enough because I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing from a customer service standpoint is I'm addressing the issue of urgent need, but I'm also, once I fix that, I'm going to go into a mode where I'm going to fix the long-term solution, right? I don't want it breaking again, but I need to fix it now. Fix first, fix the problem first, fix the process second. Then what I do is whenever I serve, I want to know, is there anything I could do a little bit better, to a little bit better degree of quality? And then the last thing I think about is there one extra step I can take? So if somebody calls the customer call center line and something's broken, I want to make sure I can fix it. I want to make sure I understand that they're frustrated, they're in trouble, they need something urgently, right? You're walking them through. I understand what they need. I fix their issue. I see if I could take it one step better to make sure this doesn't happen for them again. And then the last thing I do is I offer them a free bonus or whatever. Is there one extra step I could take? And that's my formula because I think people really enjoy being heard, being taken care of, and being whatever. And then you can go into whatever the scenario is. So that's my service formula. And then the next one is, how do you lead? So whether you're leading a person of 1 or you're leading a team of 5, what's your leadership style? What's your philosophy on leading? How did you lead your team? How did you inspire your team? How did you get your team to rise up to meet that deadline? Anything related to that. There's a handful of steps that you're going to take. Well, the first thing I do anytime I'm leading is I make sure that everybody on the team understands the team's goal. Everybody wants to be educated. We all need to know what the highest level goal is. What are we shooting for? But the second thing is, in order for them to contribute, I need to make sure that they have the processes and the tools, whether that's the communication protocols, the governance, or the systems. What do they need? Second thing is, I want them to know how they individually fit in, what they're taking, what they're giving, why their position is so vital. It needs to matter. The next thing is I want to make sure that they feel as though they're making a contribution. And so I want to be very explicit as to what they are contributing to the final outcome and the level of importance. I want to know what their aspirations are. So as a leader, I can facilitate making those aspirations happen, because it not only would you love to have people who are all company players, but it also gets them extra charged if you know you appreciate what they're doing in the form of taking care of them and facilitating their goals and aspirations. Then I lead by example. I don't ask them to do anything that I'm not willing to do. I roll up my sleeves if I need to. I stay late if I need to, whatever it might be. And then I have to offer real-time support, because no matter what I give them, however I communicate, and whatever tools and system I give them, something is going to break or come up along the way that they have not encountered, and I need to be there for them. So I had this 10-person team. You get the idea, right? There's your structure on the leadership. And I saved passion for last, because this is a tricky one. What are you passionate about? Now, whatever you're passionate about better be in alignment with what the company is doing. And it really, and by the way, if you came to me and you said, well, Andy, I don't know anything about, influencer and coaching, social media marketing, or, I've never done that for an influencer, but I'm passionate about helping people improve their lives, and there are many ways to do that, I'm going to listen to you, okay? That you're close enough. But what you need to say is you need to show them why you're passionate about what you're passionate about. If you just say, well, geez, Andy, that sounds cool. I'm passionate about helping people. That isn't gonna get you over the goal line. It'll get you in the discussion. So here's my answer for passion. So I'm really passionate about this, but I need to tell you why I'm passionate about it. Because when I think about passion, it needs to be meaningful with me, and there needs to be a purpose to it. I need to be able to contribute at a high level of value. The other thing is, the passion itself, whatever I'm passionate about, it needs to serve somebody else, because others need to benefit from my passion, because the joy is actually in the act of the doing, or not in the service I provide them, not in the act of doing. Because and I'm telling you this off the script, if your passion is in the act of the doing, you will never make it, ever make it. You won't. I don't care how much I love writing. I will burn up and dry out. I don't care how much I love talking and teaching to you. I burn up and dry out. Do you know what keeps me coming here every Thursday? The fact that you benefit, and you're going to take these words and you're going to go out and do something with it. And I'm telling you that if you are looking at what you think you're passionate about, if it doesn't pass this acid test, it's just a fleeting fancy. And then I know I got off the track there, and I need to learn and grow. And when these 5 things are in place, I know my passion will remain. And so whenever you're describing what you're passionate about, you want to explain why you're passionate about it. And if you dial up these 5, meaning and purpose, contribution and value, the ability to actually serve people who actually majorly benefit from what you're serving, and then you enjoy the acts. I have to do 8 different things to teach you, just so that I keep my own head on straight, right? That keeps me going, because I know that you need me. And then I'm learning and growing. And I teach better. I learn my subject matter better because I keep teaching it. I've never, in the 1,000 and some odd videos on YouTube, have ever described these 6 questions to teach you how to say them in an interview this way. And I've been doing this just this way for 10 years. So that's what I mean. And I saved this one for last, but just to recap it, and just to recap the approach, whenever you're given a question like these handful of questions, remember, they might come in the beginning, or they might come in the wake of you telling stories. But irrespective of that, you always want to make sure you can very quickly spit out the scenario that's about to come, but 5 seconds, that's it, max. And then you say, and there's basically 3 factors, and you're telling them in the form of a question. What is it that I ask myself in order to ensure that I'm able to do that effectively? What questions am I going to ask myself about the problems? What questions am I going to ask myself about how I serve somebody, or disagree, or influence, or anything that you describe? Cool? All right, I said I was going to get that done in 25 minutes, and I did. I hope you enjoyed that. If you're here with me live, we're going to be going to the chat. If you're watching this on a recording, I will see you next week.